I am going to present our current space. We've actually shown these ideas to a few people, and I think our main feedback that we got was, how can you say exactly how things will be in 3 months? You know, when we, or whenever we actually do open, and that's fair. Things are changing quickly. We are only presenting our thoughts now. And as CDC guidelines change, other things change, we will be changing what our thoughts of about are up to court for how we will be reopening our worship space. Our next slide. As background, how far can we see? Well, if there's fog in the valley, being up on the high mountain only lets you see the top of the fog. Sometimes I feel like that's what we're seeing. We consider reopening at every board meeting. When I had my little thing about wanting a board meeting without reopening on the agenda, I wasn't lying. I haven't had one yet. Maybe as a past president, I'll see one eventually. The presentation I'm going to show you is not a set of hard and fast rules for a permanent solution. It's a snapshot of what we think is important and what we are considering now. We don't know the details, but our expectations are that at some point we are going to reopen, hopefully during this fiscal year. And I just want to say that we know that what we have is not going to be perfection, but we are looking for solutions for reopening that are good enough for the moment, safe enough to try. And you know, we may try some things in reopening that we decide don't work. So just this process is not going to end when we are finally back in the church. Next slide, please. I have some comments from the Worship Arts Committee that I want to show first, because I think they're very germane to some, especially to some things we saw in Sage's presentation. We will want to have more than an only in-person service. There will be some kind of online presence going forth, but having two different separate services, a custom online service and a separate in-person service, are just not going to be possible with our current manpower. The committee, as it is currently composed, is tapped out, cannot do both. And what we think is, what Worship Arts has suggested, and the board agrees, making our in-person service available online in some way is probably going to be our best solution. Next, please. Just so that you all understand this, one reason why we cannot stream the music we put in our services is there's copyright issues. We can only send those things out in an outlet that has limited participation, like Zoom. So, you know, there may be a future solution that can fix this, but that's our situation right now. Having a Zoom host that can talk to the Zoom audience and share camera views of what is going on in the service would probably be ideal. And the Worship Arts Tech Group has been developed. Onetta Cooper has volunteered to be the supervisor. You may remember Rusty asking about that at our last discussion of this as to the church. And it looks like that's going to happen. So she'll be creating a team to marshal the resources we have, lay out a budget, and create a smoothly functioning organization. Next, please. All right, so what does the board think? Well, in the past, we thought that maybe end of summer would be the earliest or most likely time. Worship Arts has suggested the incoming service might be a good idea to use as our goal, and we think this is reasonable. Reverend Sarah has her mini sabbatical coming up, and we already have Sunday Zoom speakers lined up for mid-June, all of July, and parts of August. So the Sundays while Reverend Sarah's off will be Zoom Sundays. So that's one of our, you know, pegs in the sand. I hesitate to say lines in the sand. That is one of our considered pins. Zoom till Reverend Sarah's back. Next, please. So how are we going to start? Well, we've had some ideas for slow starts. One idea would be to have watch parties in the building where we display the service up on the projector, but we are together in the room watching. Kind of a easing back. Another idea, as I've already mentioned, is that we would have a team that videotapes our service and streams it online with Zoom after we have gone to in-person services. Now this, we're not saying this is how it's going to be. This is just what we're thinking might work right now. Next, please. What about finances? Well, financially, the church needs to go back in person. We need the income. There are fundraising events that require us to be in the building. And Share the Plate and Food on the First have been going, and I'm glad. But they really do work best when we can do a fund collection as part of the service. So that's our financial consideration. Next, please. So let's get back inside, but the worship arts team has really created wonderful, meaningful, spirit-affirming services, and we need to applaud and acknowledge their work. And in fact, when we go back to in-person service, people may miss some elements of what we've been seeing online, although frankly, I can't think of anything I'll miss that we can't have in person, but I'm sure there will be things. We will get a lot of joy from seeing each other under the big round window. And I think that when we're in person, it will be a very good thing for us, and we will be glad we're back in person. Next, please. So what about vaccinations? Oh, big bugaboo. The BOT is not going to require vaccinations. We're not going to ask. It's a matter of privacy, and we know there can be valid medical reasons a person's unable to be vaccinated. Furthermore, at this point, children under 12 aren't eligible for vaccines. Ours is an inclusive community by choice. We want to attract visitors, and we do not want to raise a banner by requiring vaccinations before visitors can attend. So bottom line here is we are not going to have a vaccination requirement or statement. That is how we feel right now. We're hoping that end of summer, autumn, as Margaret put in the chat, children 2 to 11 should be able to start getting their vaccinations, and that will be great. That will be a real load off everybody's mind. Next, please. What about masking? Well, at present, we are asking people to wear masks in the building mostly because of this issue of people that can't be vaccinated and children. However, we know CDC guidelines are changing, and we cannot predict what those requirements will be when we reopen. We expect there will be an update from the CDC, and we will modify what we're saying here as guidelines change. So even though we're asking people to wear masks in the building now, that may not be true. That may not be what we do when we actually have our in-person services. Next, please. What about services on other events? What's going on here? Are we going to have 1 or 2 services? Okay, the board feels very strongly at this moment that it will be a single service. As we are opening, we need to reach decisions on how to restart events like coffee hour, lunch bunch, adult forum, the coffee house, committee meetings, RE. The list goes on and on. Please bear with us while we work it all out. We're not there yet. But we anticipate that the first service at least will be a single service. Next, please. What about small group meetings? Well, hey, we have a new published set of guidelines. We ask that groups that wish to meet in the church contact the church administrator so that we can keep our calendar up to date. And our current spacings guidelines say that garden room is best for meetings of up to 10. Room 10 upstairs can accommodate 15. As I said before, at present, we request mask wearing inside the building, especially in the hallways. But we are open for small group meetings now. Next, please. So, are we walking on thin ice? Well, I'm going to credit Jeff with this idea. We know that as we are proceeding, there is thin ice here with dangers and things to consider. We can see our goal across the stream, but we still have to get there and cross some thin ice to get there. The guidelines we have been using, but so please bear with us. We have had guidelines about when to start in-person services from the UUA that were developed at the start of lockdown when risks were higher. Things like, some rate of vaccination, some particular transmissivity, some particular number of deaths per 100,000. We have seen those kinds of numbers. But we're thinking that the way things are going right now, those guidelines seem to be too strict. So we're going to be reopening following our own timetable, follow how CDC guidelines change, and we will respond to local risk trends. Next, please. We want to get together. The Board of Trustees will continue to monitor statistics. And the reason why I emphasize the board is because the board is not responsible for saying how services are going to be run. That's up to Worship Arts. The board is not responsible for a lot of things, but the board is responsible for the safety of our members. And board procedures are geared towards member safety. We will be monitoring statistics, and we will reopen the church when we feel it is safe to do so. We will not necessarily have a perfect solution, but it will be good enough for now and safe enough to try.